The season starts 1 week from today. We have huge quarterback battles going on at Michigan State and Ohio State. We've got a gambling suspension at Iowa. Got all the deets right here. Keep it locked in. Locked On Big Ten starts now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We always appreciate it. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a Spartan battle for quarterback. We'll get into that, plus a season-long suspension at Iowa and our Big Ten Classics. Be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Did you know it? 1 week from today, Nebraska and Minnesota opening up the Big Ten season on a Thursday night special. By the way, Minnesota a 7.5-point favorite. We'll take a look at point spreads tomorrow. But with 1 week to go, Michigan State football coach Mel Tucker, who is entering his 4th season as the head coach of the Spartans, still has not named a starting quarterback for Michigan State. You know, it's an important decision for everybody, but especially for Michigan State. After an 11-win season in 2021, some problems and some injuries took their toll on the team looking last year, and they're looking to bounce back, but they've got a brutal schedule for we're going to go over this before we're done here today. The Michigan State schedule, I think it's the toughest one of the Big Ten. Some people say Minnesota. We're going to go over this. We have before, but it looks even more difficult. It's unreal. So we'll get into all of that as well. Gone from last year's team is starting quarterback Payton Thorne. You know, he threw for 6,500 yards, 49 touchdowns, and 24 interceptions in his career at Michigan State, but he decided he wanted to move on. He goes to Auburn. Hugh Freeze just named him the starting quarterback down there, so good luck to him. Meanwhile, Noah Kim and Katin are the two quarterbacks battling for this job. Going into the summer, a lot thought it was Noah Kim that was going to be the starter, but Katin has given him a pretty good battle in an all-out open competition for the job. Now, Kim is a little bit more experienced. I mean, he's played 4 games. He's thrown 3 touchdown passes. Hauser is a 4-star recruit from 2022. He's completed 1 pass in his entire collegiate career for 2 yards. That's it. But he's a little bigger, a little stronger. They say he's kind of a gunslinger type if he gets out there and plays. So we'll see. This doesn't look like it's going to be announced any day now for sure. They might run this right up to the start of the season. Offensive coordinator Jay Johnson said there's no hurry. And he says we're not rushing to name a starting quarterback. Every day is just one day at a time. They treat every day as a game day. Now, the weapons, looking ahead who they are going to be able to throw to, they lost a lot of talent at Michigan State. Jaden Reed was a second-round draft pick in the NFL. He caught 18 touchdowns in 3 years at Michigan State. Keon Coleman caught 7 touchdown passes just last year alone. He transferred to Florida State. I don't know. I guess he didn't like the cold weather, but he moved south. And I am curious to watch Antonio Gates Jr., and he's in the second year. I'm kind of curious to see how quickly he moves up the depth chart, whether he gets some snaps this year, see if he inherited anything from his father that we watched in All-Pro in the National Football League all those years. Overall, Mel Tucker is bringing in 14 kids from the transfer portal, many of them on the defensive line. They got Tumisi Adeleye. He's from Texas A&M, from Katy, Texas, at Tompkins High School. Jalen Sammy is from Colorado. I guess he got out of there part of the Dion exodus, but he was at Colorado back when Mel Tucker and a lot of his staff were back at Colorado before they took the Michigan State job. So here we are, full circle, coming back to play for Mel Tucker. Jarrett Jackson, he comes in from Florida State, and Dre Butler from Liberty. And all in all, these guys, every time you hear these coaches, whether it be Mel Tucker or Scott Hazelton, the defensive coordinator, anytime they talk about these guys that came, they're all like 6'5", 300 pounds. They're very excited to have them and to fix a big problem that Michigan State had last year. In fact, and plus they got so many of them now, they can just rotate guys and keep guys fresh. They're not going to wear out at the end of the game. They're going to do their job and help everybody on the back end of the defense. Mel Tucker spoke at media days about how they were so banged up front last season. They couldn't stop anybody. It was a big problem. And he said they made a massive investment in the front seven of the defense. So they're good with more depth. They've got some linebackers coming back. We'll get into that in just a minute too. But Scott Hazelton says, look, we got to be better on the defense. We got to stop the run. We got to get better on turnovers. They did not win a turnover battle last year. And he says, look, we got to be successful stopping things up front on first down and put these offenses in a deficit, longer yardage and distance to go for first down, take more chances. That's where we get our interceptions. That's what they're going to try and do this year, trying to get that offense they're going against behind schedule and get aggressive, trying to force the turnovers. Now, I mentioned at linebacker, they're pretty good. Cal Halliday returns, 120 tackles last year. He is all over the place. If you don't know who this kid is, he's fun. You got to watch him. He's old school. But his 120 tackles were second best in the Big Ten last year. He averaged 10 tackles per game. That actually was number one in the Big Ten. But if you notice him closely, he doesn't wear gloves. He doesn't tape up his wrists or anything. Like just skin out there. He said his dad made him play that way as a kid to toughen him up. So he's going to get scraped up a little bit, but that's just how he is at linebacker. That's perfect mentality for a kid at linebacker. Absolutely old school. The Spartans open up Friday, September 1st against Central Michigan. In fact, they open up their first 4 games at home. That's good. That's about the only good part about their schedule, if you want to be honest about it. It includes Richmond. It includes 10th ranked and future Big Ten team Washington, and also Maryland, which is capable of winning 9 or 10 games this year. So a lot of good teams early, and that's the easier part of this schedule. Their first road game after those first 4 at home, they're at number 25 ranked Iowa. You know how hard Kinnick Stadium is, how hard it is to play there. And then the back half of their schedule, and that's before the bye. Then they get the bye to rest up for the back half of their schedule, which is ridiculous. Michigan, Ohio State, a Minnesota team that wins 9 games every year. And they close out the season the Friday after Thanksgiving on Ford Field, neutral site, if you will, against Penn State. I mean, that's brutal. So whoever ends up winning that quarterback job, whether it's Hauser or Kim, is going to have their work cut out for them. But that is a tough schedule. And in a year when you really want to put all your eggs in a basket and have a big bounce back year against a schedule like that, that is going to be tough. So Mel Tucker and company have their work cut out for them. Your comments, if you agree or disagree, are always welcome. Follow me on Twitter at Talk Big Ten and hit me up there. Or I always answer the comments down below on YouTube. They've been great. Thank you for doing all that. We'll have the latest camp news. There was a team that did name a starting quarterback, and also a suspension at Iowa. We'll have details of this story, which I'm sure a lot of people are upset about as well. Plus some tactics at Maryland. We're going to bounce around from camp to camp with all the details. That's all coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. And while Mel Tucker is trying to put pieces in place and improve his team where he had weaknesses last year, trying to build a championship team, making sure everyone's a perfect fit. It's the same thing when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part that you need fits right first time around. Just add your ride to my garage and then look for the green check to know that your part will fit or your money back, because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, Exclusions apply. Okay, so we have some news out of Iowa, and we just previewed some stuff on Iowa yesterday here on this podcast. Hope you caught. A lot of you did. Thank you very much for all that. And also a couple weeks ago, we did a piece on this very podcast about there were some sports gambling issues going on at Iowa and Iowa State. And one of the kids that was talked about was Noah Shannon. He's a 6-year senior defensive tackle. Well, the NCAA has announced that he has been suspended for the entire season for alleged sports gambling. And the school immediately said it will appeal. And Kirk Ferentz, the head coach of the Hawkeyes, he actually sounded pretty sympathetic toward this kid. And he has throughout this story. Because Kirk Ferentz, he's been a little late to the party and kind of acknowledging sports gambling is a thing. It's going on. It's legal everywhere. And he said something interesting. He goes, first of all, let's talk about Noah Shannon. He said he's a good kid. He didn't break a law. He broke an NCAA rule. And he did not bet on Hawkeyes games. So he said, look, we need to revisit these rules and tweak them a little bit. And he says, I think that the student athletes today still sign the same paperwork or waiver regarding sports gambling as Ferentz signed when he was a player, like 35 years ago. So he says we need to bring it into the modern age. He's probably right about that. I don't know if it's going to help Shannon. Shannon probably will have to sit out the rest of this year. My question is, now this is a 6-year. Can he appeal and get a year back after the suspension, or is he done? I don't know. That's an NCAA question. So anyway, they'll appeal. He has been injured, by the way. I don't know that he was going to be ready to start the season. And he is allowed to stay with the team, continue to heal and to practice while the appeal goes on. He just can't play in any of the games. Also, good news for the Hawkeyes. They're pretty deep at defensive line. They got Aaron Graves, Yaya Black, Logan Lee. They got a lot of players that they can rotate in there. And Iowa's season opener is September 2nd at home versus Utah State. So we'll keep you posted on that. It's time for our daily update at Ohio State. There is none. Still no quarterback named as of yet for the starting quarterback for the season against their season opener against Indiana. Bret Bielema, however, has announced that Ole Miss transfer Luke Altmaier will be QB1 for the Fighting Illini. Bielema says he's ready and he has earned a job. Still no word out of Ann Arbor if Jim Harbaugh was or is on board with this 3-game self-suspension that he's getting for alleged recruiting violations against the NCAA. So we're still not sure. Was this AD Ward Manuel stepping up saying, hey, we got to do this? Was this President Santa Ono, who's been pretty supportive of Harbaugh in the past? Was it Ono's decision? Was Harbaugh in the meeting saying, hey, this will be a good idea. Let's just take our medicine now, or it's going to be worse down the – we still don't know. We've been talking about this story for 2 or 3 days. We still don't know if Harbaugh was in on it. And finally, news out of the Maryland football camp. They're working on the deep ball over there. Talia Tagovailoa averaged a career-low 7.7 yards per attempt last season. He averaged 8.1 a year before. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is a drop-off. And Mike Loxley and offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis, their plan this year. And again, I think they're going to have a pretty good season, to be honest with you. They're going to pound it. They got a running back, Roman Hemby, just a big, strong, 235-pound guy, just going to just smash mouth, run the ball, and then, boom, surprise you with a pass over the top. They got a couple of receivers from the portal this year. Caden Prather out of West Virginia and Tyrese Chambers out of FIU. I think Talia's going to have a big, big year. And I'm one of those people that thinks Maryland in the 8-9, or if everything goes right, 10-win category. But I think they're going to have a big season, and that's what they're working on there. Also, I want to thank you at this point for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. Our Locked On Big Ten Roundtable with other Locked On hosts is out. It is called the Ultimate College Football Preview on Locked On Big Ten. Check it out. A lot of you are finding it. A lot of times it follows this podcast here on YouTube. Speaking of which, be sure to subscribe. Man, I think we're within like 30 of 3,000. Subscribe, click it. It's free. Help me out. And I will thank you immensely for that. Also, no matter where you're checking this podcast out, on video or your favorite audio app, be sure to share and follow and like Locked On Big Ten. Spread the word, get it out there. If you guys are just listening on the audio, it's a perfect thing to listen on your car ride to work. Or we have the video version here as well. But if you could share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, that would be a great, great help to us. Coming up, our weekly feature, it is our Big Ten Network Big Ten Classics. We're going to look ahead to what is coming up on the weekend. All that right here on Locked On Big Ten. Locked On Big Ten is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate in life. And life can be pretty tough. So it helps you move forward with confidence and excitement. And it also helps you, learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, be the best version of yourself, and be happy. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. And by the way, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedoncollege. All right. You know what I like to do here on Thursdays in our final segment is to check out what's coming up on the Big Ten Network. I love their Big Ten Classics. And there's going to be starting to be more live programming on now that we're getting into the fall season. In fact, in and around all the classics that they put up there, there is going to be some women's college volleyball. There's a couple of the tournament going on and stuff like that. So, I mean, the sports season is here. I'm going to put it on the screen for those of you just listening on audio. I'll explain what we have up here and going to add it up. So we're going to start with Friday, August 25th. Like I said, they got at 5:30. These are all Eastern times. The women's college volleyball game match between Wisconsin and Baylor. And then at 8 o'clock, the women's college volleyball, TCU versus Minnesota. Both of those are at the Maturi Pavilion in Minneapolis, a tournament going on there. So it's going to get a lot of airtime this weekend on the Big Ten Network. And also moving ahead to Saturday, August 26th, 12:30, Ohio State Football Classic, the 2022 Rose Bowl, Ohio State versus Utah. C.J. Stroud, 573 yards and 6 touchdowns in that game. Unbelievable. It was only a year and a half ago. Oh, it was one of the most wild and crazy Rose Bowls of all time. Then at 1:30, the Michigan Football Classic, the 1993 Rose Bowl, Michigan versus Washington. That was MVP Tyrone Wheatley with 235 yards in that game. And then we're back to some volleyball at 3:30. The women's college volleyball, Creighton at Purdue. Now, that is not part of that tournament in Minneapolis. That is actually at Holloway Gymnasium in West Lafayette. Then at 5:30, we go back to the tournament in Minneapolis, the women's college volleyball there with Wisconsin and TCU at the Pavilion, followed by the 8 o'clock Eastern time, Baylor and Minneapolis, same tournament out there. Then, as we change the page here, let's go check out what's going on Sunday. We've got the Wisconsin Football Classic, the 1994 Rose Bowl, Wisconsin versus UCLA. And that was where Big Ten Player of the Year, Brent Moss, ran for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. Follow that with the Michigan State Football Classic at 1:30, the 2014 Rose Bowl, Stanford and the Michigan State Spartans. Of course, we spent a lot of time talking about the Spartans at the top of this podcast today and their humongous, tough schedule that they've got this year. We'll see how they do. We wish them the best of luck. at 2:30, the Ohio State Football Classic, the 2018 Rose Bowl, Ohio State versus Washington. That's where Dwayne Haskins, 251 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. And then finally, at 3:30 Eastern Time, the Penn State Football Classic, the 2023 Rose Bowl, Penn State versus Utah just a few months ago. Sean Clifford, 279 yards and 2 touchdowns in what was his last game for the Nittany Lions. Of course, Drew Aller is going to take over at quarterback this year with huge expectations for the 7th-ranked Penn State Nittany Lions, and we'll see how he does. And, of course, Penn State with a pretty good track record at quarterback. So we'll see how Aller performs this season. But that's a look at our Big Ten Network's Big Ten Classics coming up over the weekend with a little bit of live activity mixed in. And then, of course, football season starting next week. And again, as I mentioned at the top, can you believe it? Thursday, one more week before we get our first real Big Ten football to start the season. I can't wait for it. And I can, but I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. That is finally here, as we've been talking about this all summer long. Nebraska and Minnesota going to be the first game out of the box on that Thursday night. So anyway, glad you tuned in for all this here today. I want to thank you guys, as I always do, for checking out Locked On Big Ten and making it your first listen every day. Spread the word. Help us out, both if you just listen on your favorite audio podcast or if you check us out on the video. Either way, appreciate you everydayers who check in and day out. Our next show, we'll have the latest from all the Big Ten camps. Plus, I'm inviting all of you to look for our Locked On Big Ten Roundtable podcast with other Locked On Big Ten podcasters from the schools. All got together. I have to admit, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it. I watched it myself again the other day, even though I was in it. The Ultimate College Football Podcast. That's what it's called. The Ultimate College Football Podcast. It is out now. In the meantime, many ways to always interact with me on Twitter at Talk Big Ten. And be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Again, one more reminder, check out the Ultimate College Football Podcast as well. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Can't wait till we meet again. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.